The Corians were a race of elegant, silver-skinned beings known for their unparalleled diplomatic skills and serene wisdom. Their home planet, Coriana, was a lush world where harmony and peace reigned. When the Galactic Council decided to make first contact with humanity, the Corians were the natural choice to lead the mission. Lyra, the most esteemed diplomat of her generation, was chosen to represent her people. Lyra prepared meticulously for her journey. She studied human history, culture, and their rapid technological advancements. Yet, one thing puzzled her above all else: humanity's history of conflict and aggression. The humans had achieved so much, yet they were often embroiled in wars and disputes. Her mission was clear: understand these unpredictable beings and forge a lasting peace. As her sleek silver spacecraft approached the human space station, Orion's Gate, Lyra's thoughts were a whirlwind. The station, a marvel of human engineering, floated majestically against the backdrop of a distant nebula. Its enormous docking bays bustled with activity, ships of various designs coming and going. Lyra's ship docked smoothly, and she prepared to disembark. She adjusted her formal diplomatic robes, the flowing fabric shimmering in the artificial lights of the docking bay. As she stepped onto the station, she was greeted by a delegation of human officials, each one representing a different aspect of human society. Among them, one figure stood out: Captain Daniel Dan Hale, tall and broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes and a calm demeanor that belied his reputation as a formidable military leader. He stepped forward, extending a hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Orion's Gate, Ambassador Lyra," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "It's an honor to have you here." Lyra took his hand, noting the strength in his grip. "Thank you, Captain Hale. The honor is mine." Lyra and the human delegation made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of Orion's Gate, the walls lined with murals depicting humanity's journey from Earth to the stars. Each section of the station seemed to tell a story, showcasing human achievements and their indomitable spirit. The delegation led Lyra to a grand conference room, its large windows offering a breathtaking view of the stars. The room was filled with representatives from various human factions, all eager to meet the Corian diplomat. As they took their seats, Lyra could feel the weight of their expectations. She knew that this meeting was crucial, not just for diplomatic relations, but for the future of interstellar cooperation. Captain Hale took his place beside Lyra, acting as her primary liaison. "Ambassador, allow me to introduce some of our key representatives," he said, gesturing to the officials around the table. Each one nodded in turn, their expressions ranging from cautious curiosity to open friendliness. The discussions began formally, with Lyra presenting the Corian vision of peace and mutual understanding. She spoke of her people's history, their advancements in technology and philosophy, and their commitment to peaceful coexistence. The humans listened intently, their reactions varying from nods of agreement to skeptical frowns. When it was their turn, the human representatives spoke passionately about their achievements and challenges. They highlighted their technological innovations, their cultural diversity, and their relentless pursuit of knowledge. But they did not shy away from discussing their history of conflict and aggression. They explained how adversity had shaped them, driven them to push boundaries, and ultimately led them to the stars. Lyra found herself fascinated by their stories. Despite the apparent chaos and aggression, there was a thread of resilience and determination that ran through everything the humans did. She began to see that their history of conflict was not just about destruction, but also about survival and growth. After the formal discussions, the atmosphere relaxed, and the delegates mingled informally. Lyra took the opportunity to observe human interactions more closely. She noticed how they laughed, argued, and debated with a fervor that was both bewildering and captivating. Captain Hale approached her, offering a glass of a human beverage called wine. "You seem deep in thought, Ambassador," he remarked with a smile. "What do you think of us so far?" Lyra accepted the glass, taking a cautious sip. The taste was rich and complex, much like her impressions of humanity. "Your people are passionate," she replied thoughtfully. "There is much I still do not understand, but I am eager to learn more." Dan nodded, his expression turning serious. Passion can be a double-edged sword. It's driven us to great heights, but it's also led to many conflicts. Our history is a testament to that. As they spoke, Lyra felt a connection forming between them. Despite their differences, there was a mutual respect and curiosity. She realized that understanding humans would be a complex journey, one that would challenge her perceptions and beliefs. But with Captain Hale by her side, she felt a sense of hope and determination. Meetings often turned into heated debates. Representatives from various human factions clashed over policies and strategies. The fiery temperament of humanity was on full display, and Lyra found it both fascinating and overwhelming. She was used to the calm, measured discussions of her own people, where consensus was reached through quiet contemplation and mutual understanding. Here, however, every issue seemed to spark an argument. One such meeting became particularly intense. The topic was the potential military alliance between humans and Corians. While some human officials, particularly those from the United Earth government, were eager to forge a strong military partnership, others were wary of becoming entangled in another race's conflicts. "This is about our survival," argued Admiral Thompson, a stern-faced woman with a reputation for her uncompromising stance on security. "We need to be prepared for any threat, and a military alliance with the Corians will bolster our defenses." "But at what cost?" countered Senator Morales, a passionate advocate for diplomatic solutions. "We cannot afford to be seen as aggressors in the galaxy. We should focus on peaceful collaboration, not military might." Lyra watched as the debate grew more heated, the room filled with raised voices and pointed fingers. She glanced at Captain Hale, who remained calm and composed amidst the turmoil. He caught her eye and gave a small nod, a silent assurance that this was just part of the process. Finally, Lyra stood and raised her hands, a gesture that commanded attention in Corian culture. The room fell silent. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I understand that these discussions are crucial for your people's future. However, I ask that we approach this with the same respect and understanding that we wish to see in our alliances. Aggression and hostility will only hinder our progress." Her words seemed to have a calming effect, and the tone of the meeting softened. Yet Lyra could not shake the feeling of underlying tension. She realized that understanding human aggression would require more than just observing their debates. She needed to see it in action. Lyra's heart raced. Captain Hale's demeanor changed instantly, his calm replaced with focused urgency. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his voice firm but reassuring. They hurried to Sector 7, where a small skirmish had broken out between human soldiers and an unknown alien race. The intruders, tall and armored, wielded energy weapons, and their intentions were clearly hostile. The air was thick with tension, the sound of weapons fire echoing through the corridors. Lyra watched as Dan took command. He moved with a precision that spoke of years of training and experience. "Hold your positions," he ordered his troops. "Cover the civilians and secure the area." Despite the chaos, Lyra noticed how Dan remained composed and strategic. He directed his soldiers with clear, decisive commands, minimizing casualties and damage. His presence had a stabilizing effect on his troops, who rallied under his leadership. Amidst the firefight, a group of intruders advanced towards a cluster of civilians. Lyra's instincts took over. Drawing upon her limited combat training, she joined the defense, using her agility and the station's layout to outmaneuver the attackers. Her actions, though unexpected, helped turn the tide in that part of the battle. After what felt like an eternity, the intruders were repelled, retreating back to their ships. The alarms ceased, and the station's security forces began securing the area. Dan approached Lyra, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You did well," he said, his voice sincere. "Thank you for your help." Lyra, still catching her breath, nodded. "I only did what I could. Your leadership was the key." As they surveyed the aftermath, Lyra's perspective on human aggression began to shift. She saw that what appeared to be aggression was often a response to threats, a means of protecting and preserving life. Dan's actions during the skirmish exemplified this. His strength and decisiveness were driven by a desire to safeguard his people. The incident left a lasting impression on Lyra. It was one thing to hear about human conflicts in meetings, but witnessing it firsthand was profoundly different. She saw the complexity and depth of human behavior, the fine line they walked between aggression and protection. And in Captain Hale, she saw a man who embodied both the fierceness and compassion of humanity. Intrigued by Captain Hale's actions during the skirmish, Lyra requested a private meeting with him to better understand his perspective. Dan agreed, inviting her to his quarters later that evening. The room was modest yet filled with personal touches: a framed photo of his family, a collection of ancient Earth artifacts, and a few books on human history and philosophy. As Lyra entered, she noticed a faint scent of something sweet. Dan had prepared a pot of tea, an old Earth tradition, he explained as he poured 2 cups. "It's chamomile," he said with a smile. "I find it helps to unwind after a long day." They settled into chairs, and Dan began by asking about Korean culture and their approach to conflict. Lyra described the Korean emphasis on harmony and their aversion to violence, which stemmed from centuries of internal strife that nearly destroyed their civilization. "We learned that true strength lies in unity and understanding," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the weight of her people's history. Dan listened intently, then shared his own story. He spoke of humanity's tumultuous past, marked by wars, revolutions, and relentless pursuit of progress. "Our history is filled with conflict, but it's also a story of resilience and hope," he explained. "Every struggle taught us something new, pushed us to adapt and innovate." Lyra was particularly struck by Dan's recounting of the Martian Rebellion, a pivotal event in human history where colonists on Mars fought for independence from Earth's government. Despite the brutality of the conflict, it ultimately led to significant reforms and greater unity among human colonies. "It was a turning point for us," Dan said, his voice tinged with both pride and regret. "We realized that our survival depended on cooperation and mutual respect." As the conversation flowed, Lyra felt a growing connection with Dan. His candidness and depth of understanding were unlike anything she had encountered before. They discussed the nature of aggression, and Lyra began to see it not merely as a destructive force, but as a complex response to existential threats. She learned that for humans, aggression was often intertwined with a fierce drive to protect and preserve. In a moment of vulnerability, Dan shared his personal experiences. He spoke of losing friends in battles, the burden of command, and the constant balancing act between duty and compassion. Lyra could see the toll it had taken on him, yet there was also a profound strength in his words. "Every decision weighs heavily," he admitted, "but we fight because we must protect those we love and the ideals we believe in." Panic spread through the station as news of the impending attack circulated. Lyra and Dan were summoned to an emergency council meeting. The room buzzed with tension as officials and military leaders debated the best course of action. The gravity of the situation was clear. This was not just a battle for the station, but for the survival of humanity itself. Dan took command, his calm authority cutting through the chaos. "We need to prepare for immediate engagement," he said, outlining a defense strategy. "Our primary objective is to protect the station and its inhabitants. We will use every resource at our disposal." Lyra offered her assistance, drawing on her knowledge of Korean tactics and technology. While her people were pacifists, they had developed advanced defensive measures. "We can integrate Korean shielding technology with your systems," she suggested. "It will enhance your defensive capabilities significantly." As preparations began, Lyra joined Dan in the command center. The atmosphere was charged with urgency as teams worked around the clock to ready the station for battle. Soldiers armed themselves, engineers reinforced the station's defenses, and medical teams prepared for the inevitable casualties. The tension weighed heavily on everyone, but Dan remained a pillar of strength. He coordinated efforts with a steady hand, ensuring that every aspect of the defense was covered. Lyra marveled at his ability to stay focused under such pressure. Despite the looming threat, he took time to reassure his crew, boosting their morale with his unwavering confidence. As the Dravonian fleet drew closer, the sense of impending doom grew. Lyra found herself reflecting on her recent conversations with Dan. She now understood that the aggression she had once feared was also a source of strength. It was a means of survival, a way to protect what mattered most. In the final hours before the attack, Dan and Lyra stood together, looking out at the stars from the observation deck. The distant points of light seemed to mock the turmoil within the station. "This will be a tough fight," Dan said quietly, "but we'll give it everything we've got." Lyra nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "And I'll be right here, fighting alongside you." The moment of calm was fleeting as the alarms blared once more. The Dravonian fleet had arrived, their massive ships blotting out the stars. The battle for Orion's Gate was about to begin, and both Lyra and Dan knew that the outcome would shape the future of their worlds. Captain Dan Hale, now the de facto leader of the station's defense, moved swiftly between command centers, hangars, and meeting rooms. His presence was a source of reassurance for both the human crew and their alien allies. His tactical acumen and calm demeanor under pressure inspired confidence, even as the threat loomed ever closer. Lyra, having shared her insights and knowledge, found herself more deeply involved in the defense efforts than she had ever anticipated. Her diplomatic skills were put to the test as she coordinated between different factions within the station. The urgency of the situation required quick decisions and efficient action, a far cry from the measured, deliberative diplomacy she was accustomed to. In one of the main hangars, rows of starships stood ready for launch. Pilots and crew members made their final checks, their faces a mixture of determination and apprehension. Dan gathered the squadron leaders for a briefing, laying out the strategic plan to counter the Dravonian assault. "We're facing an enemy with superior numbers and technology," Dan began, his voice carrying authority and resolve. "But we have the advantage of home territory and the element of surprise. We'll split our forces into 3 main groups: defense, interception, and a strike team." He detailed the roles of each group, emphasizing the importance of coordination and communication. The defense team would focus on protecting the station and its vital systems. The interception team, composed of the fastest and most agile ships, would engage the enemy fighters and disrupt their formations. The strike team, a mix of human and Corian vessels, would attempt to infiltrate the Dravonian fleet and target their flagship. Lyra watched as the leaders absorbed the plan, nodding in agreement and asking pertinent questions. She could see the trust they placed in Dan, a trust that she had come to share. Despite the dire circumstances, there was a sense of unity and purpose among the defenders. As the meeting concluded, Dan pulled Lyra aside. "Your insights have been invaluable, Lyra. I know this isn't your usual role, but your presence here means a lot." Lyra smiled, touched by his words. "I've come to understand that sometimes the best way to achieve peace is by standing strong against those who threaten it. I'm honored to stand with you." With the final preparations in place, there was nothing left to do but wait. The tension was palpable as everyone took their positions, ready for the battle to commence. The silence of space was shattered by the arrival of the Dravonian fleet. The enemy ships, dark and menacing, filled the view screens, their numbers seemingly endless. The command center of Orion's Gate buzzed with activity as sensors tracked the incoming vessels and defensive systems were activated. Captain Hale's voice rang out over the station's intercom. "All units, this is it. Remember your training, trust your teammates, and let's show them what we're made of." The first wave of Dravonian fighters launched a ferocious assault, their energy weapons blazing. The station shields, enhanced by Corian technology, held firm against the initial barrage, but it was clear that this was only the beginning. Human and Corian interceptors sprang into action, engaging the enemy in a chaotic dance of laser fire and evasive maneuvers. Lyra found herself in the command center, monitoring communications and coordinating between the various defense groups. The room was filled with tense voices, the steady stream of status updates, and the occasional burst of static as ships reported their positions and encounters with the enemy. Dan, aboard the Resolute, led the interception team. His ship moved with precision, taking down enemy fighters with calculated shots. The Resolute's crew operated like a well-oiled machine, their confidence in their captain evident in their every action. The Dravonians, however, were relentless. They adapted quickly, their tactics shifting as they tested the station's defenses. A particularly aggressive wave managed to breach the outer perimeter, causing localized damage and sending shockwaves through the station. Lyra's heart raced as reports of casualties and damage came in. She focused on her role, relaying critical information and ensuring that the different teams remained coordinated. Amidst the chaos, she noticed patterns in the Dravonian attacks, insights that she quickly shared with Dan and the other leaders. "Captain Hale, the Dravonians are concentrating their fire on the station's eastern sector. It looks like they're trying to create a breach point," she reported. "Copy that," Dan replied. "We'll redirect our forces to counter their push. Good catch, Lyra." The battle raged on, with both sides taking heavy losses. The Dravonians pressed their advantage with superior firepower, but the defenders of Orion's Gate fought back with tenacity and ingenuity. The station's defense cannons, operated by crews who had trained for this very moment, unleashed a torrent of firepower, repelling wave after wave of attackers. As the first clash reached its peak, Dan's strike team prepared for their critical mission. The plan was to penetrate the Dravonian fleet's formation and deliver a decisive blow to their flagship, which would hopefully disrupt their command structure and turn the tide of the battle. "Strike team, this is Resolute. Prepare for launch. We have one shot at this." Dan's voice was resolute over the comms. Lyra watched as the strike team ships powered up and launched into the fray. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. The outcome of the battle, and perhaps the fate of humanity, rested on their success. The strike team, a diverse mix of human and Corian ships, raced towards the heart of the Dravonian fleet. Their objective, to infiltrate the enemy formation and disable the flagship's command systems. The journey was fraught with danger, as enemy fighters and capital ships bombarded them from all sides. Captain Dan Hale piloted the Resolute at the front of the formation, his hand steady on the controls. "All units, stay tight and follow my lead. We punch through their line and head straight for the flagship," he commanded, his voice calm and authoritative. Lyra, stationed in the command center, monitored their progress with bated breath. She coordinated with the station's defense forces to provide cover for the strike team, directing interceptors and defensive fire to draw enemy attention away from the crucial mission. As they approached the Dravonian flagship, the strike team faced a wall of concentrated fire. The Dravonian defenses were formidable, but Dan's strategic maneuvers and the combined skill of the human and Corian pilots allowed them to weave through the onslaught. Several ships were lost in the process, their sacrifices creating openings for the rest of the team. Finally, the Resolute and a few surviving ships broke through and reached the flagship. Using advanced cloaking technology and precise flying, they managed to dock with the massive enemy vessel. The docking was a delicate operation, but the teams executed it flawlessly, attaching their ships to the hull of the flagship and cutting their way inside. Dan led the infiltration team, which included elite human soldiers and Corian operatives. They moved swiftly through the dimly lit corridors of the Dravonian ship, neutralizing guards and avoiding detection wherever possible. Lyra, through a secure comm link, provided real-time intel and navigational support based on the scans from their ships. The team reached the central command center of the flagship, where they found a heavily guarded control room. Dan signaled for a coordinated assault. Using a combination of human and Corian weaponry, they launched a surprise attack, overwhelming the guards with precision and efficiency. Inside the control room, they encountered the Dravonian commander, a towering figure with a menacing presence. The commander fought fiercely, but Dan and his team were relentless. After a tense and brutal skirmish, they managed to subdue the commander and take control of the room. Lyra's voice came through the comms, clear and focused. "You've done it, Captain. Now, we need to disable their command systems and create chaos in their ranks." Dan and his team worked quickly, planting explosives and hacking into the flagship's control systems. They uploaded a virus designed to disrupt the Dravonian fleet's communications and navigation, rendering their ships vulnerable and disorganized. As the countdown on the explosives ticked down, Dan gave the order to retreat. Lyra, back in the command center, saw the impact of their efforts reflected on the tactical displays. "Captain Hale, the enemy fleet is in chaos. This is our chance to launch a full counteroffensive, she urged, her voice filled with a newfound sense of hope. Dan, now back aboard the Resolute, relayed the command to all units. All forces, this is Captain Hale. The enemy is vulnerable. Engage with everything you've got. Let's finish this. The defenders of Orion's Gate rallied, their spirits lifted by the successful infiltration and the sight of the crippled Dravonian flagship. The station's cannons unleashed a relentless barrage, tearing through the enemy ships. Human and Corian fighters swarmed the disoriented Dravonian vessels, exploiting every weakness. The battle intensified, but the tide had clearly turned in favor of Orion's Gate. Dan led a series of daring strikes against key Dravonian ships, coordinating with Lyra and the station's defense forces to maximize their impact. Each successful assault further destabilized the enemy fleet, causing more ships to retreat or be destroyed. As the Dravonians' morale crumbled, several of their commanders made the decision to surrender. Lyra, using her diplomatic skills, facilitated these surrenders, ensuring that the Dravonian crews were treated with respect and fairness. Her efforts not only helped to secure more prisoners, but also spread word among the enemy ranks that surrender was a viable option. Amidst the chaos, Lyra and Dan maintained constant communication, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. They worked seamlessly together, a testament to the trust and understanding that had developed between them. Their combined leadership became a beacon of hope for everyone fighting on Orion's Gate. In the final hours of the battle, the remaining Dravonian ships either fled or surrendered. The defenders of Orion's Gate had triumphed against overwhelming odds, their unity and determination winning the day. The station, though battered and scarred, stood victorious. As the dust settled and the last enemy ship retreated, cheers erupted throughout Orion's Gate. The battle was won, and the threat of the Dravonian invasion had been repelled. Dan and Lyra, exhausted but elated, shared a moment of quiet triumph. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and pride. Dan smiled, his eyes reflecting the hard-won victory. "We did it together. You were incredible, Lyra." She shook her head modestly. "It was your leadership that made the difference. I'm just glad I could help." With the Dravonian fleet in disarray, Captain Dan Hale and his crew pressed their advantage. Orion's Gate, though battered, remained a symbol of human resilience. The remaining Dravonian ships, leaderless and confused, struggled to regroup. Dan knew that a decisive strike was needed to secure the victory and ensure that the Dravonians would not pose a future threat. "All units, prepare for a final offensive," Dan commanded through the comms. "We need to eliminate any remaining Dravonian presence in this sector. Stay sharp and watch each other's backs." Lyra, working tirelessly in the command center, continued to coordinate the efforts of the human and Corian forces. Her strategic insights and real-time analysis were crucial in directing the final stages of the battle. She could see the exhaustion in the faces around her, but also the determination. They were so close to victory. The Resolute led the charge, its weapons blazing as it cut through the enemy ranks. Dan's tactical brilliance shone as he orchestrated complex maneuvers, using the station's remaining resources to their fullest potential. Human and Corian fighters, inspired by their leaders, executed daring attacks that crippled the remaining Dravonian ships. One by one, the Dravonian vessels fell. The once formidable fleet was reduced to a scattered collection of damaged ships, desperately trying to escape the onslaught. Dan focused on the largest remaining Dravonian cruiser, a behemoth still capable of dealing significant damage. "Target their engines and weapon systems," Dan ordered. "We need to neutralize them completely." The Resolute and its allies converged on the cruiser. Precision strikes disabled its engines, rendering it immobile. Boarding parties were dispatched to secure the ship and take any remaining crew prisoners. Among them was a team led by Dan himself, determined to ensure the operation's success. Inside the crippled cruiser, Dan and his team faced fierce resistance. The Dravonian soldiers, though demoralized, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. The corridors echoed with the sounds of battle as Dan led his team deeper into the heart of the ship. His focus was unwavering, his determination unyielding. Lyra monitored their progress from the command center, her heart pounding with every update. She provided real-time support, guiding Dan through the ship's layout and helping to anticipate enemy movements. The connection between them, forged in the crucible of battle, gave her strength. After a tense and brutal struggle, Dan and his team reached the cruiser's command center. The Dravonian officers, recognizing their defeat, surrendered. The capture of the cruiser marked the final blow to the Dravonian forces in the sector. The battle was over. Captain Dan Hale, weary but unbowed, walked through the station, personally thanking the soldiers and crew members who had fought so bravely. His leadership had been pivotal, and the gratitude in their eyes spoke volumes. Despite the exhaustion, there was a palpable sense of pride and camaraderie. Lyra, too, moved through the station, offering her support and gratitude. Her presence had been instrumental in the victory, and the respect she had earned from the humans was evident. She visited the medical bays, comforting the wounded and acknowledging their sacrifices. The bond between humans and Corians had deepened, forged in the heat of battle. In a quiet moment, Dan and Lyra met on the observation deck, the vastness of space stretching out before them. The stars, once a backdrop to war, now seemed to symbolize the endless possibilities of peace and cooperation. "We did it," Dan said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and pride. "Orion's gate stands thanks to you." Lyra shook her head, her eyes reflecting the stars. "We did it together, Dan. Your leadership, your courage, it inspired us all. I've learned so much about humanity, about strength and compassion." Dan smiled, a weary but genuine expression. "And I've learned from you, Lyra. Your wisdom, your ability to see beyond the immediate conflict, it was crucial. We make a good team." Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of senior officials from both human and Corian leadership. Plans for rebuilding and securing the future began immediately. The victory had created new opportunities for cooperation and alliance, and both sides were eager to capitalize on the newfound unity. As the discussions progressed, Lyra and Dan remained central figures in the planning. Their combined insights and experiences were invaluable in shaping the future strategies and policies. The mutual respect they had developed became a cornerstone of the new alliance. In the days that followed, Orion's Gate transformed from a battleground to a symbol of hope and resilience. The repairs continued, and the station began to return to its role as a hub of interstellar cooperation. The scars of battle remained, but they served as reminders of what had been overcome. Lyra and Dan found themselves spending more time together, their bond deepening with each passing day. They shared stories, hopes, and dreams, finding solace and strength in each other's presence. The connection they had formed was undeniable, a testament to the power of understanding and unity. The victory at Orion's Gate had far-reaching implications. News of the triumph spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and the once fractured alliances began to see the potential of unity against common threats. Delegates from various races arrived at the station, eager to forge new bonds and strengthen old ones. A grand summit was organized, bringing together leaders from across the galaxy. The newly repaired Orion's Gate served as the venue, symbolizing resilience and the hope for a collaborative future. Lyra and Dan played pivotal roles in the summit, their recent experiences making them natural leaders in these discussions. Lyra addressed the assembly, her voice filled with the calm authority that had become her hallmark. "The battle we fought here was not just for Orion's Gate, but for the idea that diverse races can stand together against tyranny and oppression. We have shown that unity is our greatest strength." Dan followed, his words carrying the weight of his experience and determination. "We face many challenges ahead, but together, we can overcome them. Our victory was only possible because we stood united. Let this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation and mutual respect." The summit proceeded with a sense of urgency and optimism. New treaties were signed, and military and economic alliances were formed. The Corians, inspired by Lyra's experiences, committed to deeper engagement with other races, including sharing their advanced defensive technologies. In return, humanity offered their strategic and technological expertise, fostering a sense of balance and mutual benefit. Throughout the summit, Lyra and Dan worked tirelessly, their synergy evident to all. They navigated the complexities of interstellar politics with ease, their shared experiences giving them unique insights into the needs and aspirations of different races. Their bond, now well known, became a symbol of the potential for harmony between disparate cultures. The final day of the summit saw the signing of the Orion Accord, a comprehensive agreement that established guidelines for peaceful coexistence and mutual defense among the member races. The accord was a testament to the hard-won understanding and respect that had been cultivated through the trials of battle and the challenges of diplomacy. As the delegates departed, there was a palpable sense of accomplishment. Orion's Gate, once just a symbol of human engineering, had become a beacon of hope and cooperation. Lyra and Dan stood on the observation deck, watching the ships of various races depart, each bound by a new sense of purpose and unity. "We've accomplished something incredible here," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride and relief. Dan nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "This is just the beginning. We have the foundation now. It's up to us to build on it." Lyra and Dan found themselves at the center of these changes. Their roles as diplomat and military leader evolved, intertwining as they worked to maintain the momentum of the newfound unity. Their bond, forged in the crucible of conflict, continued to deepen, transcending their professional relationship. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning sessions, Dan invited Lyra to join him on a tour of the station's quieter areas. They wandered through the Arboretum, a lush green space filled with plants from various worlds. The tranquility of the place was a stark contrast to the tension and chaos they had faced. "Sometimes, it's hard to believe how far we've come," Dan mused, his voice soft as they walked among the trees and flowers. Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the gentle light of the setting suns simulated in the Arboretum. "It's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together. I'm grateful to have been part of it, and to have met you." Dan stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. "Lyra, you've become more than just an ally to me. You've shown me a different way of thinking, a way to balance strength with compassion." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, her own feelings mirrored in his eyes. "And you've shown me the courage and determination that drive humanity. Together, we've made a difference." They stood there, the silence filled with unspoken understanding and the bond that had grown between them. It was a moment of connection, one that transcended their roles and the challenges they had faced. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining, a silent promise of the future they would face together. In the following days, their relationship blossomed. They became a source of strength for each other, balancing their demanding roles with moments of shared laughter and quiet reflection. Their connection was no longer just professional but deeply personal, a beacon of hope for those around them. Lyra's diplomatic duties took her to various worlds, where she continued to advocate for peace and cooperation. Dan, as a military leader, focused on ensuring the safety and stability of the new alliances. Despite their demanding schedules, they always found time for each other, their bond a constant source of support and inspiration.